Today we are learning all about particles and the different states of matter. The word particles just means tiny bits of matter, and it's important to know that all matter is made of tiny particles that are too small to see. So when you think about a piece of matter, like this brick, you should recognize that it's actually made up of lots and lots of tiny little brick particles. Now the particles showed here are way bigger than they actually are in real life. To put in perspective just how tiny these particles of matter are, let's think about a pencil. Just in the tiny tip of this pencil, there are not 100, not 1,000, but well over 100 trillion particles. By imagining this many particles all crammed together into the tip of a pencil, you can start to realize just how tiny these particles of matter are. However, even though these particles are small, they're incredibly important. You already know that there are three main states of matter: solids, liquids, and gases. But it's actually how the particles in matter are organized that determines what state of matter something is. For example, this is what the particles in a solid look like. Notice that in a solid, the particles are packed tightly together, and the particles can vibrate, but they don't actually move around. Liquids, on the other hand, are different. Here's what the particles in a liquid look like. Notice that the particles are moving more. In a liquid, the particles are still close together, but the particles can move and slide around. Finally are gases. This is what the particles in a gas look like. In a gas, the particles are far apart from each other, and the particles are always moving and flying around. Now that you know a little bit about the particles of matter, let's practice applying our knowledge. Let's describe what the particles in this glass of milk would look like. Well, to start, what state of matter is this milk? You can see that the milk is a liquid, and remember that the particles of a liquid look something like this. When we talk about particles, we want to mention how close together they are. How close together are these particles? We could say these particles are close together, but they're definitely not tightly packed. Next, which describes how these particles are moving? The particles in this liquid are definitely moving, but they're not flying all over the place. We could say that as a liquid, the particles in the milk are close together and that the particles are moving around. Now it's time for you to describe particles on your own. Here is a large rock cliff. What would be the best description of the particles in these rocks? Well, this rock is a solid, and remember that the particles of a solid look like this. The particles are tightly packed together, and the particles vibrate but do not move. Here's one more try. This girl is carrying a bunch of balloons. Which is the best description of the particles of air inside of the balloons? Well, the air inside the balloons is a gas, and remember that the particles of a gas look like this. In a gas, particles are far apart, and particles are constantly flying around. So from today, remember two things. First, that all matter is made of particles that are too small to see. And second, that particles are organized differently in each state of matter.